Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Greg and Paul. This is the big fight breakdown for the big undercard fight on the undercard of Fabio Wardley versus Fraser Clark at the O2 on the 31st of March. Florian Marku will take on Chris Kongo in a welterweight clash in a fight that's seen as a 50-50 fight and a fight that, a lot of people are interested in. Greg, Paul, really looking forward to this one. I think, look, we've kind of followed both their careers, in particular for Florian Marku for a variety of reasons. And I'm really looking forward to discussing this one with you. First one, first point we're gonna touch on here is this Florian Marku's toughest challenge. We've kind of he's had a bit of a hot and cold career. He's been on the floor a couple of times in his career, but he's looked impressive sometimes as well. But yeah, is this his toughest test? Greg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Elliot. I think so. I think this is his toughest test, and I think it's by some distance, if I'm being honest. One thing I always remember about Chris Congo is how highly Josh Taylor rates Chris Congo, said he was a very, very good amateur, very awkward. So, yeah, I think this will be a hard night's work for Florian Marku.
Yeah, no, look, Marku is had a stoppage win against Chris Jenkins in Newcastle a couple of years back now. He's fought a couple of guys with decent records, but yeah, I don't think he's probably not fought anyone who's kind of beyond British level. I think it's fair to say. Paul, would you agree with Greg? Is this Florian Marku's toughest test?
Yeah, mate, I think it has to be. As you mentioned there, a couple of fighters with decent records that he's beaten, most notably last time out as well. I remember doing reaction with yourself, Elliot, after this one round blowout. Dylan Moran or whatever, I think his name was. But yeah, I think it's definitely his toughest test. Obviously, we'll go more into the actual fight as the video goes on. But for me, yeah, toughest test, and I take my hat off to him for having fights like this. To be quite honest with you, these are the kind of fights we want to see.
Yeah, it's not a fight he kind of had to take. Obviously, they had that coming together at it was the Buatsi Aziz press conference back in the summer, which was obviously kind of very public. And what, 6 months later, they're going to be in the ring with each other. And we'll see what happens on the night. Chris Congo, 2 defeats on his record, lost to Michael McKinson a couple of years back, and had that loss to Echo Westman last year, which was a very close fight up in Manchester. So he's not disgraced himself, but I think it's fair to say Chris Congo doesn't have kind of that big win on his resume, which arguably neither does Florian Marku. Um, Want to know who the favourite is here, chaps? I know kind of the three of us, we've done our fair share betting tip shows for ESBR. Some good tips, some tips not so good. Um, on the platform that I use, Florian Marku is the slight favourite at 4-5, whereas Chris Congo is evens. So that's obviously makes Marku a slight favourite here. But who do you think is the favourite going into this fight? Paul, I'll go back to you.
Yeah, I think I find them quite interesting, those odds, and I do think it's telling of the fight. Kind of almost it is, although they're slightly in favor of Marku, I think you've got to say that this is a lot of people would say it as a 50-50. In my eyes and in my head, I do actually make Chris Congo a favorite. Put it this way, I would be more surprised from a betting standpoint if Marku was to win rather than if Congo was to win. That's just the way I'm viewing it. If I didn't know those odds and you had have asked me what the odds were, I maybe would have thought that Chris Congo was an ever so slight favourite. So yeah, that's where I see it. So I do see Congo in my head as a bit more of a favourite. But as you say, neither man really has that standout elite win on their resume so far. But yeah, for me, I would have said Congo's maybe a slight favourite. So that is surprising enough to me.
Yeah, and it's a tricky one. We'll see if those betting odds change. Obviously, we were recording this a couple of weeks out from the fight, so we'll see kind of who everyone's picking come fight night. Greg, who do you think's the favourite? And let us know if those betting odds that I shared surprise you or not.
It's funny that you say that, Elliot. I actually, when you said that, I haven't seen any odds for the fight, and I genuinely thought that that's what the odds were going to be. So I was quite pleased with myself there. You said that was the odds. It's a difficult one for me because I think it is a very, very even fight. If you asked me 2 years ago who would win that fight, I'd be overwhelmingly confident Chris Kongo would win. Now, the momentum, it lies a little bit with Marku, I think. He's got seems to have a bigger platform than Kongo. The fight's probably more being made because of Florian Marku. I think the odds are just about spot on because I think, with the greatest of respect to the average fan who doesn't really watch, they're going to know Florian Marku and what he can do compared to Chris Kongo. So the bookmakers have been smart with those odds. So it doesn't greatly surprise me, but like Paul said, it's just telling how close a fight this really is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, not on the agenda that we put together, gents, but I do want just to quickly discuss inactivity. Florian Marku boxed 1 round in 2023. That was against Dylan Moran. Chris Kongo fought 12 rounds, obviously in January in 2023. So that's 0 rounds in about 15 months. I make it. Does that? I'm talking more about kind of worrying about Kongo rather than Marku here, because Marku's obviously still gone through a training camp, still kind of made weight, had a fight last year. Kongo, as I said, it's been 15 months now. That's the kind of not good for anyone. Greg, does Chris Kongo's lack of activity in the last 15 months, does that concern you at all? Worth knowing as well that the last fight he did have 15 months ago did end up in a loss. So it's actually been a while since he's had a fight. Does that on your mind at all?
Yeah, Elliot is a lot, and that's what's making me sway that this fight is extremely close because I think Chris Kongo is extremely talented. He's probably been pushed into some fights at a pace that maybe isn't greatly comfortable for him. When he fought McKinson, he had the ability to beat McKinson, but he was too green. And then he's in against someone like Eko Essuman, who is a very, very good fighter in his own right, but he's had no steps before he's took on these guys, if that makes sense. So yeah, it does make me think that I feel a little bit concerned about the fight because I think for Chris Kongo to win this, it has to be his very best. And it's 15 months out coming off a defeat, are you at your best? So yeah, interesting one for me, Elliot.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's a pretty crucial time for his career, I would say. I don't like he's not a young fighter anymore. I don't think he's lived up to expectations that he was that were there when he was an undefeated fighter. And I feel like if he loses to Florian Marku, he's going to be labeled as the sort of fighter who every time he stepped up has lost, which would be fair, to be honest. Those are kind of the facts. So we'll see. Paul, I want to ask you staying on the topic of Chris Kongo, how good do you think he is and what he can achieve? A lot was being spoken about him. I know he went into the Michael McKinson fight as a favorite. Yeah, like he's got a couple of decent names on his record. There was the fight against Luther Clay a few years back. He's beaten Sebastian Formella. How good is Chris Kongo? What level do you consider him to be on, and what do you think he can accomplish in his career?
I think when you look at the welterweight landscape now, I find it hard to put him above British level. And that's not me being critical. That's not a criticism of him. You know, to be a British level fighter, you have to be very good. Um, so that's not a criticism of him at all. But I think, you know, if you're going beyond British level and you're saying, well, next after that's European level, do I see him fight? You know, I make someone like he's probably going to laugh, but he's a good example. I make Lewis Crocker potentially a European level fighter now, and I wouldn't see Chris Kongo being able to deal with him. You know what I mean? And he's not a world level fighter yet. Lewis Crocker might well go on to be, but he's not at the minute. So for me, I'm just going to have him put him at that British level, which is also testament to where I think Florian Marku is right now as well. That's why it makes a compelling fight because I have previously said that I don't think Florian Marku could be a world champion or maybe even a European champion. So I would have had him. Obviously, he's not British, but if he was, have him around a similar level. So that's why I suppose I'm intrigued in this fight because I would make them both at a similar level right now. But in terms of Chris Kongo, yeah, I don't really see him much beyond that. Maybe maximum European, but I never see him being a world level fighter.
Yeah, no, we shall. Yeah, we shall see. Greg, give us your thoughts on what Paul said. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
Do you know, I actually say this like I don't normally agree with Paul. I do, but I really do agree with him. But what I would say, Paul is maybe thinking is Lewis Crocker is a very, very good fighter. Lewis Crocker, if he doesn't get to world level, that's probably going to be a bit of a letdown. So for me, to answer your question, I think that Chris Kongo's European level. I think if he fought a decent European operator, Italian, a Frenchman, etc., he wouldn't be disgraced in that kind of fight and he could win it. But against someone like Paul saying, a Lewis Crocker, a guy who's expected to probably go on a bit, I think that's where Chris Kongo might always come up short. So I think, yeah, I think in my eyes, Elliot, if you're giving Eku in a close fight, I think you're European level.
Yeah, completely fair. And we'll see who wins on March 31st and see who kind of goes on to bigger and better things. Finishing off with some predictions, gents. Greg, you are spared from giving a prediction. I know you're doing your own prediction video for this fight. If you're watching this video, please take a look out for that. It will be on our channel. Looking forward to seeing what you're going for, Greg. I know it's a tough one as always. So we'll leave it down to Paul and myself. Paul, who are you predicting for this one? Florian Marku or Chris Kongo?
Yeah, mate. I was looking forward to getting Greg's prediction, but I guess I'll have to wait. But no, I'm in all seriousness, I'm backing Chris Kongo, and the reason I'm saying it is I do think he's just the better boxer. Think that he's fundamentally basically has all the tools if he's at his best to beat Florian Marku. That being said, I completely agree with what Greg said earlier. He has to be at his best here, and he can't afford any slip ups because as raw maybe as Marku is, he can dig, as we saw in his last fight. And I think that if you're Chris Kongo, you've got to be on your A game here. And I think it's kind of win or bust for Chris Kongo. Really, he's lost that one to McKinson, obviously, who's gone on to challenge up, like the likes of Virgil Ortiz or whatever at that world level. He obviously got beat by Echo Esserman, who held the British title for a long time before recently losing it. But yeah, I think that this is kind of win or bust. I think lose this, and Chris Kongo will have to kind of really go back to the drawing board and rebuild. But it's a fight I do think see him winning, probably on points. Is my safe bet. But yeah, Chris Kongo to win via decision. That's where my head's at right now.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? It's a really tricky one. Um, I'm a big believer in timing in this sport. I think it's so important. And I think we touched on it earlier with the inactivity. I think to go 15 months without a fight and then to go up against a fighter like Florian Marku. One thing I'll say about Marku, he can be a good finisher, as we saw in his last fight. He can hurt you and he can really pounce on you and punish you. So I'm going to disagree with you, Paul. I'm afraid. I'm going for Marku to win this fight. And I don't think he'll stop Kongo. I think he might knock him down, but I'm gonna go for a Marku decision here. Over 10 rounds, by the way. For those that don't know, it's over 10 rounds rather than 12. So we'll see. Greg, I will ask you one question. As the slight underdog, what give us like a pointer into what Chris Kongo needs to do to win this fight, in your opinion?
He needs to have a perfect jab, Elliot. Perfect. Bam, right down the middle. Every time Marku comes in, pepper him with it. And if you do that, if you start off with good fundamentals, a good hard jab, it's hard for someone to beat you. So I'm going to keep it as simple as that. He needs to have a really sharp jab on the night, and he stands as good a chance as anyone.
Fantastic. Okay, we're done. We're done. Looking forward to this one. I think it could be the best undercard fight you see in the UK this year. It could be the most kind of eagerly awaited undercard fight you see this year. But we'll see. I think it's really one to look forward to. Florian Marku versus Chris Kongo, O2 Arena, 31st of March, live on Sky Sports. Greg, Paul, thank you very much for both of your time, and I will speak to both of you again soon.